A very warm welcome to all of you. Thank you so much for joining in to this talk show, which is called Schoolversity, organized by OP Jindal Global University. My name is Professor Dr. Upasana Mahanta. I'm a faculty here at OP Jindal Global University, and I'm also the Dean of Admissions and Outreach. Now, the talk show, the topic of the talk show is National Education Policy, Holistic Multidisciplinary Education. Now, the thought behind the talk show, I'm going to come to it in a minute. Before that, I want to talk a little bit about why do we want to talk about national education policy and sort of unravel the holistic multidisciplinary education that it proposes. Now, national education policy, comes along every few decades. India so far has had three national education policies. The first one came in 1968. The second one came in 1986. And the 86 was revised once in 1992 when P.V. Narasimha Rao was the Prime Minister. Right? And actually, effectively, the third NEP has come in 2020, which, after a massive gap, which proposes sweeping changes in the context of the higher education landscape in India. Now, what is an NEP? The National Education Policy is essentially a document, a framework that guides the development of education in a country, right? So the 2020 NEP, the National Education Policy, has actually come after a gap of nearly 34 years, right? Now, what is the NEP talking about? It's talking about opening up Indian higher education to foreign universities. It's talking about, introduction of a 4-year multidisciplinary undergrad program. It talks about doing away with MPhil. It talks about having multiple entry and exit options in institutions of higher education. It talks about vocational education. It talks about multidisciplinarity and interdisciplinarity. It talks about an academic bank of credit, right? Where the credits can be banked and, the flexible entry and exit can happen. It talks about multidisciplinary research intensive universities. So it's imagining Indian higher education in new and innovative ways. Now, it is also imagining school education in new and imaginative ways. It talks about overhauling the curriculum. It talks about, retaining only core essentials and focusing on experiential learning, critical thinking. As opposed to the 86 policy, which pushed for a 10+2 structure of school education. National education policy is talking about a 5+3+3+4 design, which is a sort of new proposal in the context of school education, right? It focuses on regional languages and mother tongue, and it focuses again on experiential based learning. Now, what does all of this mean in terms of the shifting education landscape in India? Now, the idea, and now I'm coming to the thought process behind having this talk show and calling all you educators into this, is that we as an institution of higher education, OP Jindal Global University, and as an institution of eminence, we have been recognized by Government of India as an institution of eminence. We feel that we have a responsibility towards sort of materializing the vision that NEP proposes. A lot of the things that NEP proposes in the context of higher education, multidisciplinarity, interdisciplinarity, and so on and so forth, are some of the practices that we are already doing as an institution of eminence. Now, we recognize that we do not operate in a silos. It's not like universities operate in an island separate from that of school education, right? And the people who are coming out of schools are coming into the university system. So how do we create a better ecosystem? How we as educators, both at the school level and at the level of institutions of higher education, can come together in order to be able to talk meaningfully about national education policy, identify the challenges, and create a pathway for a more collaborative approach towards it. That is the thought process behind having the talk show. And I want to extend my deepest gratitude to each and every one of the distinguished panelists who joined us here today and who have agreed to be part of this conversation. I want to do a quick introduction. We are very, very privileged to have with us today Ms. Neha Mathur. She is Principal, Euro International School, Jodhpur. Welcome, ma'am. Thank you so much for joining in. We have Dr. Pulak Bhattacharya. He is the Dean of Studies, Cambridge International School, Guwahati. Thank you very much, Dr. Bhattacharya, for joining in. We have Mr. Sushant Srivastava. He is Vice Principal, Seth Jaipuria School, Goel Campus, Lucknow. Thank you, Mr. Srivastava, for joining us for this panel. So the format that we do is that I go to each of our distinguished panelists and they have, some time, they can take their time to reflect on the topic. So we go one round and, excuse me. Sorry. And then perhaps we could take questions and have another round. And that sort of takes up the time. Please feel free. You can engage with each other. So, Dr. Bhattacharya, you can pose a question to Ms. Mathur. Ms. Mathur can pose a question to Mr. Srivastava, and, Mr. Srivastava can do the same. And I'm here to moderate the conversation. So thank you very much. I want to start with you, Ms. Mathur, and I would love to hear your thoughts and reflections.
All right. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I would like to express my gratitude to Mr. Suryakant Jain, Dr. Upasana, and Ms. Sindhu Paul for smooth onboarding. And it's a wonderful concept. And I think educators across the globe are discussing about the changes requisite in the post-pandemic world in the education system. And it's a pressing challenge. And Schoolversity is the need of talk shows like this are the need of the hour, where people need to engage into discussions to restructure the education system to produce quality, industry-ready learners. So, well, the topic of the talk show is National Education Policy, Holistic Multidisciplinary Education. So, NEP envisages that by 2030, it will establish large multidisciplinary higher educational institutions in every or near every district, right? That's the implementation deadline of the multidisciplinary educational institutions, right? So what does basically holistic multidisciplinary education mean? It means liberal education, wherein it will unlock and develop all inherent capabilities of human beings in all aspects, intellectual, social, physical, emotional, moral, in an integrated manner. So what will NEP offer? It will offer flexibility to choose subjects, credit-based and project-based courses, creative combinations of subjects where interrelated subjects can be chosen as contrasting to the single disciplinary, one-dimensional undergrad courses that we have in the old education policy. So we'll come to the drawbacks of the current education system towards the end of my viewpoint. So, and it envisages cutting edge curriculum and technology integrated, innovative teaching pedagogy in order to facilitate liberal education. So liberal education is not a new term for us Indians, right? So India has a long tradition of holistic and multidisciplinary learning, from universities such as Takshila and Nalanda to the extensive literatures of India, combining subjects across fields. Indian ancient literary works such as Banbhatta's Kadamkari, it described good education as knowledge of 64 kalas or arts. Amongst these 64 arts, there were not only singing, painting, but there were also scientific fields such as chemistry, mathematics. There were also vocational fields such as cloth making and carpentry. There were professional fields such as medicine and engineering, as well as soft skills such as communication, discussion, and debate. So the very idea that all branches of creative human endeavor, including mathematics, science, vocational subjects, professional subjects, and soft skills, should be considered as arts has distinctively Indian origin, and the notion of knowledge of many arts, which is now termed as liberal art. It looks like a fancy new term, but it has a very Indian origin. So that is the need of the hour. The Gen Z learners require 21st century skills, and probably this is what it used to happen in the old Gurukul days. This is how they were taught, right? They had flexibility to choose subjects across discipline. A person could have studied in the Vedic education system in that era. People could have chosen astronomy and medicine and maybe psychology together. They were trained that way in the Vedic system and in our old education system. So we are moving back to our roots. And most Indian parents have long favored the professional education for their children. They view it as a gateway to a stable and well-paid job. But with the advent of privatization of institutions, we have many engineering and medical colleges who are producing oodles of engineers, but they lack the real world skills. According to industry experts, they are not employable. That means that they are taking up single dimensional professional courses, but they're not capable of solving the pressing challenges of the world. Now, in the post-pandemic era, in a world where we have pressing challenges like climate change and disruptive technologies like AI, the one-dimensional restrictive education system will not suffice. We require liberal education and multidisciplinary education, wherein students or the Gen Z learners get the flexibility to choose amongst the subjects, and where their creative and artistic as well as the analytical part of their brain gets nurturing, and multiple skills are developed in the learners. So this was all the gyan that we get to hear everywhere when we hear the term NEP, or every video or blog post or TED talk you hear about this. But let's move to the practical aspect. So I would like to contrast the new education policy with the old or the prevalent education policy. So we'll take 2 to 3 pressing challenges that we faced in the old education system. So I would like to talk about one of my acquaintances. So she's done her studies in the US. So she did her 10th, 11th, 12th, and she had been she had subjects of various choices, and she had been doing her internship in an accounting firm. Then like all people when they pick their undergrad courses, she was also of the herd mentality. Rather than going by her skills and her dreams and her passion and her choice, she thought that she must choose the subject that most of her friends are choosing. So most of her friends were boys, so they opted mechanical engineering, so she chose mechanical engineering as well. After a year, she realized that mechanical engineering is not her cup of tea. So then there was a discussion with people and experts they knew, and they said that after 5 to 10 years, robotics will be at boom. So she must opt robotics. So she opted robotics. After a couple of months, at the end of the year, she realized that robotics is also not very challenging for her, and she's not enjoying that enough. So then people suggested that you're good at managing things, so why don't you try BBA? So she enrolled for a BBA. This is in the US, right? So she enrolled for a BBA. After a year, she realized that BBA is also not the kind of course that's giving her the required kick, or she's not getting the feel in it. Then she reflected, and after a lot of self-reflection, she realized that since the school days, she had a flavor for, she had a liking for accounting, and she was very quick. Belonging to Jodhpur, she had a good mathematical skills, and she would do complex calculations without a calculator. So she then opted for CPA, which is a course of 3 to 4 years. Now, because it was in the US, she had initially taken up mechanical engineering, then robotics, then BBA. So there they follow the credit-based system. So all the credits got added up, and a course which is otherwise 3 to 4 years, since the credits were adding up, she only had to give papers, and in the next 6 months, she could complete her CPA. And now she is a successful a person, and she's working in Ernst & Young and making it large in life. So had it been India, she would have had to spend 3 plus another 3, 6 years, and such a waste of time. And by the end of it, she would have lost the energy and the zeal to work in that field. This is one example. The second classic example of the pitfall of the Indian education system is that I know a person, she is a lawyer, and to pursue law, if we talk in context, in the Indian context, the National Law University is the best university to pursue law, right? So she did her BA LLB and a master's, right? So invested 6 to 7 years in NLU, and after 7 years she realized that she wants to switch to the field of education. Now, if you want to work in a CBSE affiliated school, you really need to have the BEd degree. Now, in order to attain a BEd degree, she was asked to go for a, since law is a professional degree, so she was asked to take up a 2-year post-graduation course, which is a normal degree. It is termed as a normal degree, right? So she had to take up a 2-year MA or something in order to enroll for a BEd, which is another 2-year course. So 7 plus 4, 11 years of education in order to become an educator, right? So this is where it is heading to in this past 7 decades post-independence. It has been excuse me, it has been a very single-dimensional restrictive education system. So the third example that I would like to discuss is that let's say there's a student who wants to become a doctor. So we'll opt biology, right? Along with biology, in the current system, we will have to choose physics. We cannot do away with physics and chemistry. So physics, chemistry, bio, PCB is must. English comes as the 4th subject. The 5th subject is what the child gets a choice in, right? So a person who likes math generally likes physics because they go together and it's associated with logic. Now, a person who has a flair for biology may not like physics, but in order to crack the entrance exams for to enroll for a medical course in a good university, the person will have to spend a lot of time mugging physics, theorems, laws. And how will laws of physics eventually help a doctor to diagnose a body? Chemistry may help, right? Chemistry is related and will help in understanding the chemicals and salts related to the various medicines that they'll be prescribing later. But how will physics actually add value? If a person is given a choice of behavioral sciences instead of physics, it's related to their interest, and it will definitely help them, analyze the patients better. It will help the future doctor to address the problems of their patient much better if they had this choice. So this is my take on the holistic multidisciplinary education, and we just hope that we are marching towards a liberal education system, and this will provide the bedrock for a better India and a better tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mathur. That were, quite comprehensive set of reflections from, tracing the history of multidisciplinarity in India to talking about how a very single-dimensional restrictive education system that existed to what are the possibilities that NEP proposes to create quality industry-ready learners. So thank you for those reflections, and we will come back to you. I want to move to Dr. Pulak Bhattacharya. So if you could please share your reflections on the topic of the day.
Thank you all connected to this program and for the opportunity. I appreciate what Ms. Mathur has already said. She was very comprehensive in her description, and I really feel like she has spoken quite a bit like what actually the whole topic is all about. She has covered most of the aspects. I'd just like to add something more to it, like from the point of view of an educator dealing with school students. This concept of multidisciplinary, or say liberal education as we call, this has been, quite a new, it's a change in the Indian system now as proposed by the NEP. But then my school, like we have been doing Cambridge education for the last 12 years. So this Cambridge education or the Cambridge curriculum has already got these things incorporated. For example, a child, as Ms. Mathur was pointing out, a child may be good at maths and physics, may not be a taker for, may not have any liking for chemistry or biology, or the other way around. So we have had students, passing class 12, the A levels, with subject combinations like physics, history, business studies, accounting, and maybe English. So that those kind of, mixture, that what at that time when we started this, kind of curriculum, many of the parents had raised their eyebrows that how it's possible, like what's going to happen. But now we feel like this is what the Indian education system is now incorporating. So we can say like that Indian education system is going back to the past, as Ms. Mathur has already pointed out. And at the same time, we also like, we feel like there is now a growing kind of a similarity brought in by the NEP. That will be a growing kind of similarity between the Indian education system and the dominant systems across the world, dominant education systems across the world. See, there has been I think a big change which is proposed by the NEP, that is in making children become, focus more on competency rather than the content. Many of the boards, I won't name the boards because we are associated with many of the boards. So most of the boards are focusing only on having children, do some kind of rote learning, solve some of the past question papers and appear in the examination and get good percentage, and learning is done. And I don't know about you, my colleagues here, my panelists and Madam you, but I think 90% of the things I had learned at my school, I don't remember now. Those went off along with the examinations. So what I learned, what is required right now is something I've gained from experience, something which is, as I said, as you mentioned the word, experiential learning. So what I've got through experiential learning, it is there today. But the rest of the things have almost, gone out along with the report cards, which have lost over the passage of time, right? So we have had, I'll be just sharing an anecdote. In a school, like I was very insistent on not giving rankings, first, second positioning, because I think that was also, prohibited by the system, that we should not be giving a ranking of students who has got first position, second position, like that. So we have had a couple of guardians, good doctors, and they came and they had an argument with me in the sense that they'll be willing to take the children away unless we give them a ranking, because the children are good at studies. So that has become the mindset that we need our children to be labeled as number one and number two. If they're number one or two in the school, they're the best. And if they're not getting a position, they're good for nothing. So I think this NEP is going to remove this kind of, this misconception. That is something we look forward to. One more thing I feel, that is my personal view, that NEP is, focusing on two things. One is to avoid dropouts, especially at in the early level, because of, the promotion of multilingualism. It's promoting multilingualism at the ECC, at the early childhood, what you call the foundational stage. This will ensure that some children who are not able to cope up maybe with the pressure of a single language, there'll be a little bit of a fallout in the rate of dropouts. That's one thing. And second thing, I don't know if my colleagues will agree to this, but I feel like this system is going to remove the kind of an egoistic concept, the egoistic feeling that only children who are good at studies take up science, the average ones take up commerce, and the hopeless ones take up arts or the humanities. So I think this is the removal of the silos, among the different the streams, is going to remove this kind of conception or the concept among maybe the society that only the good children are capable of having science, or vice versa. Children who have taken up pursuing science, they're the better ones. The others are, average or poor. But again, at the same time, the proposal is fine. The what should I say? The ideas and everything put on paper on theory is fine. I'm sure, I know that some of the concepts are already been applied by, I think Delhi University is going for a 4-year undergraduate program. So like that, the changes are being slowly taken up. In my state, there is a kind of a tendency to take up some of the minor things of NEP, with the belief that by 2030, most of the things will be implemented. But again, I have this kind of a feeling that certain challenges are there. I'm not being a pessimist, but then certain challenges are there. For example, the multilingual system in the lower classes. So a child who is in Assam studying maybe Hindi, a little bit of Hindi, a little bit of English, and maybe the dominant language of Assamese, and the parents get transferred to maybe Jodhpur after 2 years. Again, the child, unless the child is following up the national language or the international language, the English language, will face a problem in getting adjusted to that new place. So these are certain things we'll have to, these are some recommendations, but how we implement it, to what level we implement it, will definitely depend on the individual cases and individual places. For the timing, I think that's enough from my side. You can move on.
Thank you. Thank you very much for those reflections. And I think you've said it, the fact that NEP is focusing on competency rather than content, and to create a set of people who are, not there by rote learning, but there is a more conceptual understanding, there is more hands-on learning, and that is being promoted by NEP, could be the change that we want to see. And I would come to the challenges, perhaps in the next round of reflections that we are having. I would like to focus on some of the challenges that I see, and what are your thoughts on that. But before that, I would want to go to Mr. Sushant Srivastava. Mr. Srivastava, your reflections, please.
Yeah, good evening, all my panelists and Dr. Upasana. First of all, I would like to share my thing that national education policy, the term should be national education vision instead of policy, because we are seeing it as a long-term policy means something which we are going to implement, but this is a far-sighted vision for the system. And Ms. Mathur and Dr. Pulak has already covered all the points which are there, but I have few questions where we need a little bit of brainstorming. Like we have a stereotype mindset, like Dr. Pulak mentioned that the brilliant student take up science, the average commerce, and the gone cases take up humanities. So we need to go for some orientations for the parents to avoid this. And this is at every level. What we are experiencing in every part of the country is this stereotype, and whatever NEP says, until and unless our parents are convinced, because as a school leader, we are facing these challenges on a daily basis. So, universities like OP Jindal, schools which are there, now we have to come together, connect with each other, and then have orientations for the parents, so that this stereotype image is broken, because in metros, in big cities, this myth has been broken. But when you go down in the interiors, still the parents concept is बच्चे को साइंस दिलवाइए. Term 1 results have been out of CBSE. We have seen the performance. There is a drastic change. And when you are talking to the children in the classes, what you want to take? I want to take science. Though you have scored well, you have, why you want to take science? Because my elder brother, elder sister, or my uncle has done IIT. So this has to be changed, and this can change only with collaborative effort of higher education institute, universities and school. First point. Second, when we are talking about technological integration at a school level, we are not focusing on the remote areas. The primary schools, the government schools, we have seen during the last pandemic that cities, the children were having good access to the internet, but in the remote areas, even mobile phones are not there. And then we are talking about integrating technology. So this is my second question, which we need to brainstorm. Then very great words, experiential learning, PBL, project-based learnings, everything is coming up. But are we changing our system for that? All your need, your IITs, are we changing that? The entrance exam is based on merit. We are saying no grading system, no giving of ranks, but you have a cutoff in DU. You have a cutoff for NEET. So do we need to think on this and change this system also if we want to change this? Next, we are talking about STEM, STEAM, robotics, AI, all very big names. But when you go on the ground, there are so many companies coming up and robbing the parents of thousands of rupees per annum. Starting the AI curriculum, STEM curriculum for class 2, 3, 4 and charging in UP. I know in my city, Lucknow, there are n number of companies who are charging around 20,000 to 50,000 per annum for a class 4-5 grade child for STEAM and STEM education concepts. So, and when we are at school, have to fight this. Concepts are not clear, but everything is on popular show and demand business. So this business thing has to be out, and when we are talking about NEP, it is on us how to implement it. The government can only give us pointers. Then the credit base is a very, very good thing which we should implement at the school level also. Now, if the child has not given an examination of class 9th, we take a retest. Okay, why we are not grading the child throughout the year like we were doing in the CCE pattern? Everything was counted. So this is equivalent to this credit score, that if the child has done well in a particular test, that record should be credited if the child is not able to take up another test. This is my take on this. Then last point which I would like to raise is, we are talking about students in the school, we are talking about students at the higher education universities, but what about the teachers? Are the teachers upgrading themselves? We are having a driving license which is renewed after 5 years, but B.Ed course, once a teacher has done a B.Ed at the school level, he has got a license to teach the entire span of 30 years. With upgradation, we all know how it is happening. See, I am naming it like CB, I am connected with CBSC. CBSC is saying do 50 hours of training per year for every teacher. How teachers are doing in many places, they are registering online for the training courses. Video is off. After that, 15 minutes before the session is ending, they fill up the Google form, they get the attendance certificate. That's all. But what is actually happening? This is the thing. So my point is that there should be a testing done for the teachers, that whether they are upscaling their skills or not every 2 years or 3 years. And there should be, like a doctor has a license, same way the teacher should have a license, and that should be tested across the country by a national agency. And if the teacher is fit or is upgrading themselves and qualifying that, then they should be allowed to continue. Otherwise, what will happen? You have seen so many reports are coming on the national media, social media, that teachers are being paid 70,000, 80,000 per month in government schools, but they are not able to write the alphabets. This is all very, very clear. And then the point which Dr. Pulak raised about mother tongue, that if the parents are shifting, that will be a big issue. So I totally agree with this. That's all from my side. These were the points or major areas of concern which I felt that we should have a discussion on this, and if possible, universities like yours, Dr. Upasana, can help us, the schools, in changing the mindset of the parents. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Srivastava. I think that was such a comprehensive set of reflections, because it really makes my life absolutely easy now to take the conversation forward, because you've thrown so many questions amongst our midst, and so many challenges that you see in the implementation of NEP. And I'll be honest with you, that is precisely the reason actually why we thought of doing this talk show, is that, and I understand, and what you started off with by saying that, do we want to call NEP a policy or a vision? And the vision is there, but there are so many challenges to implementing that vision. And if I could just add to all the things that you spoke about, from orientation of parents to teachers training to the technological divide that currently exists, so many challenges that you have thrown up. If I may add to it, in one of the earlier panelists, I think Dr. Bhattacharya, you were talking about how the idea of a flexible entry and exit was to perhaps avoid dropouts, and which is a great idea, to be able to avoid dropouts. But the fear on the other side of this conversation, there could be a fear that it may also lead to increased dropouts, say of girls. Because, often if you look at the statistics of drops out, women have a much higher rate of dropouts from particularly institutions of higher education than men do. And this could be another way of telling them that, okay, you have whole life to finish your education because you can do flexible entry and exit. So would that actually add to dropouts? That is one. Two, of course, I want to add one more thing to the earlier conversation, because Ms. Mathur, you spoke something about, quality industry ready learners. Right. Now, is the industry ready to have somebody who has done, like, say physics and music, which is great as an idea of doing a very liberal education. But what kind of possibilities are there out there in terms of industry for an education which is so deeply flexible and multidisciplinarity? So the vision itself is great. But are we ready? Are the structural support mechanisms there in order to be able to, sustain and to be able to implement that vision? And if I may add one more thing, and Mr. Srivastava, you spoke about how institutions of higher education can come and talk about, talk to parents and other stakeholders in terms of shifting the very deeply ingrained understandings about education itself. And fair enough, and we are more than happy to do that. But what else? What else can we do as institutions of higher education apart from this? What are the ways can we collaborate with educators at the school level to be able to deal with some of the challenges that you have highlighted? So I want to throw it out there. Ms. Mathur, I want to go back to you, and then perhaps we can do one round on that.
Right. So as Dr. Bhattacharya said, that we need to remove the stereotypes and remove the silos, and we should not be putting up labels, right? But implementing NEP, are we really, what is the action plan, right? I remember one of the parent webinars that I hosted the moment NEP was launched. So the title I gave was Intent, Implementation and Impact. So we know the intent of NEP, right? But how are we going to implement? So at school level, we can, all right, we're already practicing that. We are not going by learning by rote. We are giving more hands-on experience, more experiential learning. And all right, we will give them the vocational flavor. Another important point of NEP, that we can launch various clubs. We have already, we have pottery, we have AI, we have math club, science club, we give robotics, many options that we provide. So we give them the vocational flavor, we give them a public speaking club, soapbox, and those who are interested into legal studies, we give a newly launched club, bar and bench. So we are giving the vocational flavor and the multidisciplinary environment within the capacity of a school. But are colleges and universities ready? That is a big question mark, and that is precisely the point why shows like Schoolversity are important, that we need to together look for ways in how we can effectively implement the NEP. How, to what extent are we ready for multidisciplinarity? As Dr. Upasana rightly said, that if somebody opts music and physics, what is that person going to do? So while I said that at the moment the learners are not industry ready, we precisely want the industry to be now ready for the Gen Z learners who will be having the holistic development. They will have multidisciplinary courses they'll be taking up. But to what extent is the industry ready? That is the question mark, and that is the food for thought for the recruiters. I would say that now when they'll be recruiting chartered accountants, apart from just the CA degree, what else are they looking for? If they're recruiting educators or teachers, apart from the B.Ed and the masters in their specific subject, what are the other skills that they want, which will come through multidisciplinarity? So that is what the recruiters have to think of, and what the curriculum designers, I would say, at the university level, like AICTE, UGC, they need to think that how they will allow switching between courses, and the flexibility to choose, and the multiple entry and exit points, that has to be carefully designed in order to avoid, instead of the intent of NEP is to make learning joyful ultimately, right? That learners should not end up dropping out, and they will be allowed to explore. Like switching fields at the moment is a bro raising act, right? If you tell that if somebody's done engineering and they switch to the education field, or somebody has done BDS and they're currently they've taken up courses and they're now teaching in schools, it's a bro raising act, right? Every interviewer, that's going to be the first question, that why do you want to switch the field? You've done this professional course or that course, why do you want to switch to the field or any other field, right? So this is what we have to look into, that how we will absorb people who have multiple skills, and how are we going to channelize them together. So there needs to be some standards, and maybe we need to lay out, like we have the eligibility criteria for each post or each job, I would say. So they need to be redefined now. In totality, if I would sum up, we need to redefine the eligibility criteria for all the posts now. So if you are looking for a software engineer, apart from just an engineering degree, what are the other things that we'll be welcoming? If you're looking for a doctor, apart from just the MBBS degree, what are the other things that will be welcomed together in a package? So that's my take on implementation of multidisciplinarity.
Thank you, Ms. Mathur. Quite a lot of food for thought there is to, in one thing that you spoke about is in the context of curriculum development, that how are we looking at curriculum? I think this ties up also with the point that Mr. Srivastava raised earlier about teachers training. And, are we equipped in terms of our teachers and our curriculums to be able to implement the vision that NEP is talking about? An associated point perhaps could be, and I'm throwing it out there for you all to reflect on, is that, for example, the whole idea of, say, the credit bank, right? And the idea is that you could accumulate this credit from any institution of, say, higher education. So you can do one course, say, Jindal University, one course at somewhere else, one course at somewhere else, and then you can have a bank of credit, which, again, theoretically is a great idea. But, are the curriculums, are the pedagogical tools, are it at par of the various universities from where you're accumulating these grades? Can we look at it at later holistically and said, okay, all of the courses and the credits that you have accumulated are sort of at par with each other, and therefore you are now ready? So I think these are some of the questions that we must be able to answer if we are to implement NEP in its true spirit. Dr. Bhattacharya, over to you.
Yeah, I really agree to the points made here. I'd just like to mention an irony here. I'm just going through like something in the morning. I was discussing with some parents today morning. So on the one hand, the NEP says like we are focusing more on skills, isn't it? It's more of skill-based thing that we are teaching the children, and we are taking the children away from the should I say unhealthy competition of marks and percentages. But now the CUET has come up, the Common University Entrance Test. Now, what is that supposed to be? One more examination? There's one more examination that is going to test, like the children, they have to learn, they have to follow the syllabus again, appear in the examination so that they'll be selected on the basis of that. So what I mean to say, I'm not saying that NEP cannot be implemented or that NEP has got, doesn't have a future or anything like that. But I feel like whatever we are made to believe, NEP still, there's a long, long way to go for NEP to be properly implemented. Now, again, talking about, the children being taught in, as Mathur ma'am has already pointed out, like we have somebody specializing in music and physics, and the whole industry is going to laugh at this kind of a qualification, that what is that? And Upasana ma'am yet made a point regarding the children taking up credits from different universities, where there may not be a parity in the standard of education or the standard of things being presented. Now, these are some certain things. Of course, we don't have a panacea to cover up all these. But then I think we need to take this one step at a time, and there should be some kind of policies adopted at the state level or even at the the local levels. We cannot expect everything to be done by the center, or where the central policy would be implemented everywhere. And regarding, I was really finding it very amusing, like Srivastava sir, he brought a very important point regarding the faculty development. So simply making a point that all faculty needs to, they need to have a 50-hour CPD every year. That is something like a formula being applied. But how much that has really been implemented is something that even every school at their own level has got to ascertain. Now, there have been, another question I'd like to just add up to this. The NEP in its, in its varied flavor should be ultimately the implementation will depend on the teachers, isn't it? It cannot be done by the policy maker. It cannot be done by the government. Ultimately, this has to be done by the teacher. Now, if you talk about teaching as a profession in our country, especially the private sector, how many teachers do we have who have got a passion for teaching? I don't know if my colleagues have, my fellow panelists have faced that. We sometimes get teachers who come and say that if I ask that, why do you want to be a teacher? Because I did not get any other job. And that thing is there, especially in the private sector, where teaching has become a kind of a, what should I say, the final, the job that if you don't get anything else, you go and become a teacher. So for that kind of category of teachers, do you think it is possible that this category of teachers will go through a total overhaul, upheaval, and then be able to implement the curriculum fully? So this is something, again, I think is a big challenge for us.
Thank you, actually, Dr. Bhattacharya, for highlighting the challenges and highlighting the challenge in the teacher training itself that might come up. But I'm really, I'm keen on your point on the Common University Entrance Test, which is very interesting because, see, for the longest time, the fear was that this is getting too much. There's 99.9% cutoff and 100% cutoff, and it's creating unnecessary pressures on students. But is the answer necessarily, I understand that is the answer necessarily then is to put another entrance test. And I'm taking the argument that you made one step further, and that it's not only that the students will have to prepare for another entrance test. There are now coaching centers that are going to prop up across the country, which will claim to sort of train and coach for the Common University Entrance Test. And as a university and an institution of higher education, this is a great concern for us. Right. And we really, because see, at the school level, we tell our students, from a very early age that, you must do everything that you can do. You dance and you perform and you play sports and you play music and you debate and you do everything. And it's about a holistic personality development. And suddenly everything gets boiled down. Every achievement of yours gets boiled down to whether you got a 99.99. And if that should not be the criteria that determines a personality, then the only other alternative seems to be then replacing it with another entrance test. So what could be a possible, how do we get out of this vicious cycle, and what can institutions of higher education and learning do in order to be able to get out of such cycle and to be understand and take on students in a much more holistic manner? Mr. Srivastava, over to you.
Ma'am, I totally agree with you that this is a big question which is we all are facing. And like Dr. Pulak was also mentioning about the quality of the teachers in the private sector, I would like to add in this that apart from the quality of teachers, like even the school management, the private school management, they will not be like, when they appoint a teacher, they'll see the workload, 36 periods you are getting or not. So now if you are going for a multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary approach and the child is choosing physics along with music or art, so they will say, okay, which teacher to appoint, and if the number of students in a particular subject is not sufficient, 10 or 12, so the management says this is a practical thing what everybody faces, कि why to take up students in this approach, इनको दूसरे subject में convert करो, एक teacher का load तो हो, so why to appoint a teacher and pay 45-50,000 and that tag which is there of TGT, PGT, PRT, so and how to get over. Our art teacher is going to take up classes in 12th or a music teacher and will expect the same salary, which is not practically possible in private setup, where education is become a business. It is not for a social cause. It is for a profit motive now. Any school, any private school, all the schools are selling their franchisees. So once they have done the hard work, now you are selling your franchise. You want money at the end of the year. When they are counting each and every child in the ERP, please give me royalty as per this. So the theory wise 100% marks. Implementation point, we need to go a long way.
Thank you. I think I couldn't have better summed it up myself, Mr. Srivastava. Thank you for those words. That vision-wise, 100%. How to go about implementing it, perhaps, is something that we need to think together. And that was the thought behind, having these conversations, because I think we as educators do not talk enough to each other. And I think when we do talk to each other, we realize the common grounds that we share in terms of the fears that we have, in terms of the challenges that we face. And perhaps there are ways in which we can come together, collaborate and innovate, through which many of these challenges can be countered. For example, Mr. Srivastava, you spoke about, collaborating and coming together in talking and training important stakeholders like parents, who are still very, very traditionally set, who would not understand why their child should do something which is something that they do not understand themselves. And I think we do have a role to play again if we want to position ourselves as multidisciplinary university. Yes, Mr. Srivastava, please.
Ma'am, I just wanted to say, like the seminars which you organize in different cities.
Yeah.
Where even VC sir came to our city, Lucknow.
I know.
Okay, and Abhay Ojha ji was there. So now we invited students. So my suggestion is that, because the feedback which I got from the students after attending the seminar, the students were very excited about liberal arts, the curriculum of Jindal University. But when they went home, the response which they got from the parents, चुपचाप जो course traditional universities में चल रहा है वो करो. So the point is that we need to counsel. You spent a lot of money in arranging a seminar in a hotel and getting the snacks, everything perfect, but result wise it would be better. My suggestion would be that you call the parents also there, and instead of calling 500 people, call 100 parents along with the school teachers, because you will be conducting a seminar once in a year or twice in a year.
Yeah.
The parents are in touch with us since the child has taken admission from pre-nursery till 12. So if we are telling them something and it is being enhanced by professionals from universities like yours, then it is going to make an impact. So
I absolutely agree. Absolutely agree, 100%. You are absolutely right. And it is more important to do that. And I think we must take it on, and we will do that for sure. And we will come back to Lucknow, and we will do that with parents and teachers and other stakeholders. I completely agree that must be done. And I mean, and if it is not done, then our efforts will remain futile, because it will not address the issue that lies at the heart of it. I'm completely with you. And the reason behind having these conversations was also to be able to come up with meaningful and innovative ways to engage with parents, because we know that we can talk about multidisciplinarity and interdisciplinarity, creative and innovative courses that we've come up with, but it's not like we're going to just do it in isolation from what is happening at the school system or what is happening with students at the school level and so on and so forth. Ms. Mathur, please.
So I would like to add to Mr. Srivastava's point that you have to take the parents into the loop. So see, a school ecosystem has four major stakeholders. There's the teachers, the parents, the students, and the school management. So if for successful implementation of any program or anything that we envisage to implement, we must involve all the stakeholders, and whatever change has to be brought about will be a collaborative effort of all the four. If you talk only to the students, the impact may not be that deep. So you will have to involve the school management, the teachers, the students, and the parents. So it has to be a collaborative effort of schools wherein all the four stakeholders are involved, and the universities, and of course the curriculum designers and the and also the government. So the need of the hour is coming together of all the stakeholders, the curriculum designers, in order to implement NEP and to make it a reality. And it will require a lot of efforts, a lot of brainstorming. And as we discussed in the previous rounds, that while the vision is seems very fruitful and positive outcomes are expected, but in order to make those outcomes a reality, there's a long way to go.
Yes, thank you. So the vision is promising, but there are miles to go before we sleep. So
Indeed.
On that note, I want to thank you once again, Dr. Pulak, Bhattacharya, Mr. Sushant, Srivastava, Ms. Neha, Mathur. We're so grateful that you've decided to join us for this conversation. Personally, I learned a lot, and this is extremely helpful when we have conversations like this. And I do hope that we will be back for more interactions and conversations, and that we can keep these kind of interactions between educators at different levels of higher education, school education. Because if we do not talk and build the bridges amongst ourselves, then those larger bridges that we want to build and bring in other stakeholders into the conversation would not be possible to do. So thank you once again. Thank you very much for joining in, and I do hope that we have many more opportunities in the futures to interact. So thank you very much.